Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a scenario that is honestly pretty chilling, but absolutely crucial to understand. We're exploring a hypothetical situation mapped out in our source material. What if Iran suddenly used a nuclear weapon on the United States? Now, treat this as an analytical exercise. We're going to break down the immediate shockwaves, the impossible decisions global leaders would have to make, and the long-term fallout of a cascading systemic failure. Let's just jump right in. So, I want you to picture this. You wake up, it feels like a totally normal average morning, right? You reach over, you grab your phone to check your messages, and the very first alert you see makes you just freeze in absolute disbelief. According to our sources, this is the exact second where everyday life literally stops and human history changes forever. The headline flashing on your screen reads, "Iran has suddenly used a nuclear weapon on the USA." For those first few seconds, your brain probably wouldn't even process it. I mean, people everywhere would be frantically refreshing their feeds, praying that it's just a hack, some terrible fake news, or a glitch in the algorithm. But in this scenario, the impossible is real. It's happened, and nothing is ever going to be the same again. Because here's the thing about systemic collapse. It doesn't take days. We are talking about hours. Within just 1 minute, emergency alerts would completely overwhelm millions of phones. Fast forward 15 minutes, total paralysis in the skies. Every single flight is grounded. Give it an hour, and global financial markets are trembling in sheer panic. By the 12-hour mark, schools and workplaces are shut down entirely. Ordinary life just evaporates into pure confusion as the public grapples with the very real threat of global collapse. Now, while all of us are sitting there in shock, behind closed doors, things are moving at absolute light speed. Key command centers are thrown into the fastest, most intense decision-making process on Earth. We're talking the White House staff, Pentagon officials, intelligence teams, and emergency response leaders. They are scrambling, urgently trying to figure out, is this an isolated strike? Is it the beginning of a massive coordinated attack? Or are we looking at the start of an unstoppable chain reaction? And that brings up a really terrifying point from our sources. In those first few hours, the most dangerous thing wouldn't just be the weapon itself. It would be the uncertainty. Because uncertainty is exactly what can turn one devastating act into something even worse. When leaders don't actually know what's coming next, they're forced to prepare for the absolute worst-case scenario. And sadly, preparing for the worst can sometimes accidentally trigger the exact outcome you're desperately trying to avoid. Meanwhile, back on the ground, chaos is spreading like wildfire, way faster than any official government statement could possibly contain it. Communication networks would instantly buckle under the weight of mass panic as everyone tries to call their loved ones at the exact same time. At the same time, hospitals are bracing for an unimaginable influx of casualties. Shelters are activated wherever they can be, and major cities instantly shift from their daily routines into a raw, complete state of survival mode. Which leads us to Section 1, the retaliation dilemma. So, American leadership is suddenly staring down the barrel of a completely impossible lose-lose scenario. Think about it. If they choose a restrained response, it might prevent a larger, immediate global catastrophe, but it risks projecting this crippling weakness on the world stage. On the flip side, a forceful response restores nuclear deterrence, but it aggressively pushes the entire planet toward further disaster. Every single choice here carries immense existential danger. One wrong military movement triggers a second wave of destruction. There are absolutely no clean victories here. Moving on to Section 2, a global shockwave. Because obviously, a strike on U.S. soil doesn't just stay in the U.S. It sends a massive shockwave everywhere, placing immediate, immense pressure on the Middle East. Countries are frantically rushing to secure their airspace, just trying to contain the spillover and stop any escalation. Economically, it's terrifying. Vital oil routes and shipping lanes destabilize literally overnight. And most alarmingly, neutral countries and allies face the very real threat of being dragged into a wider war. What starts local instantly becomes a worldwide emergency. On the international stage, diplomacy basically catches fire. The United Nations becomes ground zero for nonstop, closed-door meetings. And rival powers, they aren't just sitting around waiting. They're putting their militaries on high alert. U.S. allies are demanding emergency consultations, and intelligence agencies across the globe are scrambling to piece together the puzzle. Who launched it? How did it happen? Are there more weapons out there? The whole geopolitical board is upended in minutes. And while all that's happening, an information war explodes right in our pockets. Social media would become an absolute nightmare. We're talking an explosion of panic-driven rumors, fake videos, and wild claims, which makes an already terrified population incredibly vulnerable. In this kind of atmosphere, official emergency communication is literally the only countermeasure. Accurate facts, verified updates, and clear instructions from the government become essential for survival as people desperately try to figure out whether they should evacuate or shelter in place. So, what's driving all this unprecedented panic? It's the shattering of the nuclear taboo. This is the decades-old unspoken rule that nuclear weapons must never, ever be used. Because once that line is crossed, a single strike isn't just an attack. It violates the deepest global taboo in modern history. Every single defense system and military posture has to be completely reassessed. The whole concept of a limited conflict goes entirely out the window. This brings us to Section 3, the human toll. Stepping away from the military strategy and geopolitical chessboard for a second, we really have to remember the human element here. Millions of ordinary people are just trying to survive. And in the darkest times, you see acts of quiet bravery. Parents comforting terrified kids, neighbors desperately checking in on each other, strangers helping strangers on the street, and of course, the doctors, firefighters, and police officers actively rushing toward the danger. That human courage under unimaginable pressure, that matters just as much as any political maneuver. Now, assuming this crisis doesn't immediately spiral into the end of the world, survival entirely hinges on rapid de-escalation. Behind the scenes, neutral states and mediators are frantically initiating back-channel diplomacy. Those secret conversations quickly become the most important communication on Earth. There are intense, desperate efforts to stop any further retaliation before it even begins. Diplomats are trying to pry open these tiny, fragile windows for de-escalation, where literally a single verified phone call could mean the difference between a disaster and a total catastrophe. And that leads us to our final section, the fragility of peace. Let's say the shooting actually stops. The long-term impact on our global systems is still going to be incredibly severe. The global economy is looking at fractured supply chains and permanently shaken markets. Political trust is basically ruined. Citizens everywhere would completely lose confidence in the international security systems that were supposed to protect them. And as for defense, all those old assumptions about deterrence simply vanish forever. It would leave generations of historians trying to unravel how we cross such an irreversible line. If there is one massive takeaway from this entire scenario, it's captured perfectly right here. Real strength is not in destruction. Real strength is in prevention, communication, diplomacy, and refusing to let fear turn into irreversible tragedy. Running through these intense analytical scenarios actually serves a really crucial purpose for us. They remind us just how incredibly fragile peace really is, and exactly why it is so vital that we protect it. So it leaves us with this heavy question to chew on. Will humanity choose destruction or restraint? The instant a weapon like this is used, our entire species is forced to make that choice. It's definitely a lot to reflect on, but it's so important for understanding the sheer stakes of global diplomacy. If this explainer helped you grasp these complex dynamics, make sure to hit subscribe so we can keep bringing you more deep dives just like this. Thanks so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.